Hey guys, welcome to Cricket Fanatics Magazine, and this is your daily show. I'm your host, Khalid Mohideen. This is the show where we talk about all the major talking points in South African cricket. Now you're going to see a trend happening. I'm going to be trying to do as many conversations with people within the world of cricket, it's particularly South African journalists or South African personalities in general. So I just want to try and get as many conversations going about South Africa's situation, particularly in the test side. And I want to talk to you guys about various things, and I want you guys to also get involved in the comments. Now, this is not a pre-recorded show. This is a live show, so you can get involved with the super chat. The super chat is available bottom right-hand corner of the live chat. Today, I have a special guest with me. I've been working so hard to try and get a conversation with him. It's took a long time for me to convince him to do so, but he's finally going to be on the show. Now, 18 years as a journalist. He's going to give us some amazing insights. Covering the Proteas for 18 years, you can only imagine how much I'm going to learn from this conversation, how much you're going to learn from this conversation. But before I introduce you to him and before I bring him onto the show, don't forget to subscribe to this channel, of course, and click that notification bell for all future videos. Now, my guest today is Altus Momberg, and one of the most, I would say, equal journalists or unbiased journalists when it comes to covering the Proteas. I think that he's open and honest, and he's always very, very good at being able to assess where things are going wrong and where things are going right, and comparisons between how things were before and how things are going in future. I mean, I always sit in the press box when he is there. I take in his insight and I just listen. I don't try to talk to him or argue with him. I just listen because I feel that the information that he can give me, okay, maybe there's one or two few arguments when it comes to the young guys in the Proteas team. But other than that, I listen because the stories that he can tell me is unbelievable. So he's a writer, he's a journalist for Netwerk 24 or Network 24, the Afrikaans publication that is well renowned in South Africa. So I'm going to introduce you to him and bring him onto the show. Welcome to the show, Altus. Glad to give you a little bit of an intro. How's it going?
Yeah, hi Khalid. After that intro, everybody's going to be very disappointed with the rest of the hour.
I don't think so. I think it's going to be an amazing conversation, and I think it's good to let people into the conversations that I have because I'm so used to doing interviews with people, and when it's like me asking questions and them answering, I don't think they've necessarily seen me actually have a conversation with someone that I consider a close friend. So, Altus, let's just start with the major headline of the year. Now, that is obviously the Proteas. What has happened in Pakistan is obviously heartbreaking for a lot of the fans. I mean, we did a review show the other night and they were very, very heated. There was a lot of debate going on. People, Proteas fans are very fickle in a way that they want the best for the Proteas, and when they lose, they come hard at them. So it's very tricky. Let's start with the Proteas' performance. Where do you think things went wrong from your opinion?
Yeah, it's a difficult one because I was thinking about this after the final day on Sunday, and I was thinking to myself, they did it slightly better than I expected they would do in Pakistan. Frankly, I was very worried about this tour. I've been to Pakistan twice. I know the conditions there. The way we've played Test cricket since 2015 at home, where we prepare pitches with seam and bounce that other teams from around the world really struggle with the exception of Australia and England to a lesser extent. Other teams really struggle to play on bouncy seaming wickets, whereas our players are used to those conditions. And even though when we struggle in those conditions, we back ourselves to perform better than overseas players in those conditions. We still against Sri Lanka. It wasn't a very good Sri Lanka team, but they really struggled in our conditions. And this is not something I made up. Otis Gibson and Faf were very honest and open about their plans in the Test series when they were involved. What we've done by playing that type of cricket, and geez, I'm long-winded, but what we've done by playing that type of cricket is we've lost the art of scoring big runs because our players are used to a 60 or a 70 being good enough, because a score of 280 or 300 is a good first innings score, and then you bowl them out for 200, and you can get 150 or 180 in the second innings, and then you bowl them out and you win a test match. So for our batsmen, we've lost the art of going on flat wickets and scoring big hundreds, like Amla and Callis and de Villiers to a lesser extent used to do. And for our bowlers, you've only got to be disciplined. You put the ball in the right place, you apply pressure, and the pitch, every now and again, something will happen with the pitch and you'll bowl a side out. So bowling on a flat wicket where bowlers have to work other batsmen out and you have to have plans, and what happens when there's a big partnership and there are 150 runs on the board and you've got your part-time bowler is bowling on from one end, and how do you get teams out then? To an extent, at home we haven't done that at all. And if you look at our record from about 2016 when Faf took over, with the exception of Australia, we've been awful away from home. But even more so, the talk of at the time, the captain and the coach was, we win our home test matches and then we hope to nick something abroad. So with that mindset and that sort of way of playing, going to Pakistan, where the wickets are probably the most different to South Africa. In India, the wickets turn and we go in with a mindset of just close your eyes and hope to an extent. Where in Pakistan, the wickets are flat. For the most part, it is brilliant batting wickets. So that was my expectation going into the series. The wickets weren't that. There was more help for the bowlers than I expected, more help for the bowlers. To be fair, nobody's played Test cricket in Pakistan in 12 years. So I was thinking back to 2007 and especially 2003, where, just a quick aside, I was walking, we played a test match in Faisalabad, the second test, which was drawn because it was the flattest wicket I'd seen in my life. And it was 5 days in 35 degrees heat. And in the end of the pitch, you sort of where the press box was and where the gates of the stadium was, we walked across the field to go to the gates. And I walked across the pitch. And I swear to you, after 5 days, I hardly could see any footmarks or any, I'm thinking only Afrikaans, or any difference in the pitch from the first mornings. In 5 days, it didn't change anything. There was no cracks. There was no footmarks. It was so hard. And that's sort of what I expected from pitches in Pakistan. So, long story short, I thought our bowlers did really well. I thought Keshav Maharaj was brilliant in the series. I thought our batting was iffy, but I expected our batting to be iffy.
Yeah.
And the fielding was awful. The intensity at times was awful. That worries me more than anything. Yeah. Fielding and batting, that you work on, that coaches. But if you can't be the intensity on the first morning, when they started the day effectively 200 for 6 of the second test.
You know, I would
we were bowling well. They were 128 for 6, basically, if I remember correctly. Yeah. They were effectively 200 for 6, or 129 for 6. And so if you could have bowled them out for the next 50 runs, it was the wicket keeper and the tail. For 50 runs, you chased 250 on it. There was nothing really wrong with that wicket. There was some spin, but there was no variable bounce. You could bat on that wicket. Scoring was easy, but you could bat on that wicket. And we started all right. I thought Keshav bowled well. I thought George Linder bowled okay. The seamers dropped, was it Rizwan or Yashar? I can't remember. He dropped that straightforward catch. And from that moment, seemingly, he sort of went into a funk. And then the rest of the team went into a funk where there was just no energy. And they just sort of drifted for the next 90 minutes. And they went from 20 or 30 runs ahead to 170. And there was no way we were going to score 370 in 4 sessions to win that test match. So from that hour where things sort of just drifted and there was a lack of intensity and it was just meh, they basically lost the test in that moment. So that was very disappointing. The batting, Aiden Markram, brilliant. I'm very happy for him. We all know how important he is to the future. Stop smiling. I can't be so bad, Khalid. Really happy for him. Elgar is Elgar. He's always going to put in the hard yards, and he's going to battle, and he's going to fight, and all that type of stuff. Rashi, I'm very happy with. Although it's now time that he starts turning those 50s and 60s and 70s into 100s. He's good enough to do that. That comes back to my point where we've gotten out of the habit of scoring hundreds. You know, if you look at the last 20 years, China scored 43, 42, can't remember exactly. Hashim Amla scored 29, Graham Smith scored 27, AB 24, 25, I can't remember. Just think of those numbers and how many really big hundreds have we had in the last 4 or 5 years. And so that's a big worry. If you look at what New Zealand's top of the world at the moment, because Kane Williamson, when he scores runs, he goes big. And we've gotten out of the habit of doing that. And that's a big worry. And I'm quite happy with the both. I'm sort of worried that we're over bowling KG. And I'm a bit worried about Ngidi, about Lungi's body type. I'm not saying he's fit. I'm just saying he's heavy. And the wear and tear on his knees, on his ankles, is a bit of a worry to me. If he's going to bowl a lot of overs, what do I know? I'm not a doctor, but my common sense tells me with the amount of pressure that a fast bowler puts on his knees and his ankles when he slams into the pitch, carrying that much weight, which is his natural weight. Again, I'm not saying that he's overweight. That's just his body type. KG is very fortunate in the sense that he's lean, and he's got that lean, lanky body.
Physique.
So he doesn't put that amount of pressure on his body type. Brett Schultz was another bowler. I think he bowled before you were born, Khalid. He had a brilliant series in Sri Lanka in, I think, 94, where he took 21 or 24 wickets in 3 test matches. And he was left arm seam, and he was quick and mean. But he was also big, and he never really recovered from the injuries after that first series. It was a huge pity because we thought that with him and Donald, we had a left arm, right arm, both lightning fast, and it never happened because of his body type. So Nortje is good. I'm very, very. The most underrated thing in South African cricket in the last 10 years, I think, is the emergence of Maharaj, who we haven't had a spinner like him since recognition. Frankly, we haven't had a spinner like him since Hugh Tayfield in the 1950s. I'm serious. We never had spinners, but Hugh Tayfield was good in the 50s. But yeah, so I think I'm sort of comfortable with the bowling. I think Vian Miller makes a huge difference to the balance of the team. So I'm comfortable. Yeah. I'm worried that we don't have enough runs in our top order. That's the big worry going forward. We always produce bowlers, even in the 90s when we were a really good test team. We had a middling batting lineup, but we had a top bowling lineup. So if you can take 20 wickets, you can always win a test match. But if your batting is weak, you're going to be inconsistent. So that's the worry.
Yeah, because I want to ask you, you spoke about intensity, and the intensity, especially in the field. You know Boucher better than me, and him as a player coming through the system, domestically as well, the type of personality he is, the type of person he is. I would expect a guy like Boucher to be very strict in the field with the guys when they're practicing. You can see certain coaches, like particularly I'll mention maybe Ashwell Prince, that I've seen him in training, how he emphasizes the hard work in the field, and he'll make you do a drill until you get it right, or until you don't drop a couple in a row. Or the high intensity in the field is something that I would expect Boucher would like enforce in the team, and it was quite puzzling that was the case. Your opinion on Boucher currently? If he, I don't want to ask you if he's the right man for the job. It may be that's the wrong question to ask you, but there's certain press conferences where I feel that things bothered me what he said, particularly when he spoke about him adding certain technical things to certain people's games to get them to play like an attacking brand of cricket. And we're constantly talking about the smart brand of cricket, an attacking brand of cricket, which confuses me, because I feel that based on the past, if I'm going to look, and you can maybe talk to me more about it, when you select certain players in South African cricket, they should naturally be able to play that type of cricket. You don't have to enforce it, because if you get the balance right with the right players, I mean, Markram's already has an attacking type of mindset. Yes, he showed his defensive capabilities now in Pakistan. Now, I know it's only one test. You got a guy like Algo's maybe more of an anchor. Then you've got a Faf du Plessis who can switch his game up accordingly. Rassi also switches his game up accordingly. But if you pick the correct batsman, then I feel that you can have an automatic attacking brand of cricket. You don't have to enforce it. And what bothered me is when he said that, no, he's going to add certain techniques or certain things to the people's games to make them play that type of cricket.
I agree with that second part, because I think Test cricket is difficult enough to get people to play out of their comfort zone. So you pick a guy to play the brand of cricket that he played, that got him into this, got him selected. To ask him, it's one thing to ask AB de Villiers after 80 Test matches, and he's brilliant, to play a different brand of cricket and be more attacking. It comes naturally to him. To ask Dean Elgar, for example, to be more attacking, I think is counterproductive. That's just mine. But on your original question, I think you asked the wrong question, in the sense of that intensity on the field and the lack of effort's the wrong one, because it's not that they're not trying, but it's a lack of motivation more than a lack of effort, or lack of, true. I don't know what. We all through a day when you're down at the office, where some days you feel up and some days you feel down, and when you're in the field you're down. It's how you get yourself up again. The coach sits in the stand. I'm one of those, and I know it's not very fashionable in South Africa. I don't think the coach is that important. To me, the captain on the field is the important person. In rugby or football, you train the whole week where the coach is in charge, and there's 90 minutes where the players have to do what the players have to do to win the game. In rugby, there's 3 guys standing next to the field that shouts instructions from the coach onto the field. So what the captain's leadership skills is to sort of motivate the players, and if something goes wrong, get them together and blah, blah, blah. In cricket, if you play Test cricket, in a week of 7 days, you come to the field for 5 of those days. For those 6 hours on the field every day, the coach can send on a message now and again, or he can sit and steam. But what happens on the field is up to the captain. That's why the biggest mistake, I think, and I like Quinny, but I think the amount of pressure they're putting on him as one of the key batsmen, as the wicketkeeper, and as the captain is unconscionable. Now, I saw after the Brisbane Test, I think it was Ian Chappell, or it might have been Greg Chappell, said that the amount of pressure that Australia have put on Tim Payne's shoulders it's too much. They should find a way to relieve his pressure as a wicketkeeper and as a captain. Now, Tim Payne is not even expected to be one of the best batsmen as well. He's definitely the number 7 batsman in that team. Where Quinn at the moment is our one undisputed class batsman when he's in form. So you're looking to him that the way in the past we looked to Callis or de Villiers or Amla. That's the way he's batting at 5, and he's the captain, and he's the wicket keeper. Now, I was a very poor wicket keeper when I played. But the one thing as a wicket keeper is that you never switch off. So if you're the captain standing at mid-on, or even at slip, yes, you concentrate every ball, but not in the way that a wicketkeeper concentrates every ball. So to me, it's just very difficult to expect from him to do all those jobs. And that drift and that lack of intensity, unfortunately, I put at the captain's feet, because that, I'm going to piss people off now, but let's go for it. You could see the difference between the teams captained by Hashim and AB, and when that team was then captained by Faf, who was a natural captain, from 2016 to about 2018, 2019. It's just, if you have a leader on the field and somebody who wants to be captain and who's driving and who's thinking constantly and holds people accountable on the field, stuff like that, that's where, to me, look, we all think that the eventual plan of Cricket South Africa and of Bouch and of Graham Smith is to make Markram the captain in a year or in 18 months' time. That was the plan. But because he was struggling for form and he wasn't sure of his place in the team as a batsman, they didn't want to put that pressure on him now at the start of the Sri Lanka series and now going to Pakistan and facing Australia. So they were looking for a stopgap, how to get us 18 months down the road when we can hopefully make Aiden the captain. What I don't get is how that decision then went to, let's put more pressure on Quinton's shoulders rather than asking Faf, who I know still wants to be captain.
Yeah.
Just do it for the next 18 months. You're 36 years old. Be the captain, lead the team, and then we can go forward from that thing. Because I think I saw a lot of leadership on the field, and I don't blame Bouch for that. I haven't been around the team because of the pandemic, and we don't travel as much these days because of budgets as we used to. So it's difficult for me to say of him as a coach. I knew him as a player, and we all know how tough and how hardworking he was and uncompromising. So I presume he's the same as a coach. But things, I was around the team in 2004-05 when Ray Jennings was the coach. Mm-hmm. He was the interim coach after Eric Simons got fired. And nobody was tougher off the field and shouting, and players were doing laps and all that type of stuff off the field. But on the field, Graham was in charge. And even when the two of them didn't get along, it was the team who was in charge. So the thing, when the coach and the captain did along, the players tuned the coach out. And it was obvious to Cricket South Africa. That was when he was then replaced by Mickey Arthur after the Windies tour in 2005. And it was because apparently I wasn't on that tour, but I spoke to people. And by the end of that tour, they had stopped listening to him because he was a hard ass, but the players knew that he was the interim coach. So he never had that power as well, where they felt they could just wait him out. And I think this is that if you look at Indian cricket, what MS Dhoni did with Indian cricket, and then even Ganguly before him, it's when you get that dominant captain in a side, and that the team takes on the personality of the captain and its leader, the same way that rugby teams do of its coach. So, as good a captain as Siya Kolisi is, I think the Springbok rugby team took the personality of Rassie Erasmus on, because the rugby coach is the man with the final say. Where, for the most part of Graham Smith's career as a very successful Proteas test captain, Mickey Arthur as coach was his sidekick.
Wow.
And which was right, because that's the traditional way that cricket captains have always been. Nobody talks about who coached John Buchanan, the coach of that fabulous Australian test team. Everybody talks about Steve Waugh and Ricky Ponting and Mark Taylor. Shane Ward said the only coach his team ever needed was the one to drive him to the stadium. Yes. So we all know that him and Buchanan didn't get along, but still, in cricket, because the players are on the field for such a long time, you have to take the decisions on the field. You can't wait for the guy sitting in the stand to send on a message. And that's so if you have a young captain, the coach can sort of brief him the night before, or they can talk things through, or he can be a sounding board. You go and get stuff and the things go wrong on the field, then the captain has to take charge. And that's my worry with the test team at the moment. So until we can get a team with a strong personality that the captain can lead, I'll be worried about our consistency going ahead.
So I want to ask you now about that, because the transition will be not only with the captain, but the transition will also be with the team. I want to get some ideas from you when it comes to transitional phases in the past in South African cricket, because the notion by everybody and by fans is that South African cricket was much stronger in the past. Now, there's a lot of talk, obviously, about the domestic system being very strong in the past as well. And that's the reason why we had a strong teams around. Yes, we never managed to win World Cups, but we had strong competitive teams. We were always around about the number 1 spot, number 2 spot in world cricket for a long period of time. In test cricket, you spoke about those strong personalities. And if I think back, even Kepler Wessels, Hansie Cronje, all of those captains had that similar strong personalities too. The next captain needs to have that as well, because I think Faf was a strong leader, yes, but in a different way, I feel. He was a very well-liked person. He always came across as a very nice, well-liked person in the dressing room. People respected him because of that, because of the personality and the person he was and the human being he is. And I've seen kind of a transition with regards to that in the South African teams. A guy like Markram, who I feel is a very humble guy, soft-spoken, not necessarily a guy that... very soft-spoken, very well-spoken as well. More calm than, I would say, maybe a Graham Smith or a Hansie or a Kepler or maybe even a Faf. Do you personally think that he will be the right man to take over from Faf du Plessis as the next captain? Does he have the potential that you see? Because, I mean, when Graham came into the job, he was very young. Did Graham have that air about him from the get-go, or did he grow into that role?
Obviously, you know Aiden much better than I do. But from speaking to people around the country and people that worked with him at junior level when he was carrying the team and stuff like that, he does have that aura with him. So I'd like to see that. I can't speak personally of that. I can tell you about Graham. Graham had an unbelievable presence from the moment he was made captain, where he sort of led with that big jaw of his. And for the first couple of years, I think even he admit that in the beginning, he probably made a lot of mistakes because of inexperience. But there was never any doubt about who was in charge with Graham. There's the famous story when I think he went to they played against Bangladesh, where he made his. So we fell out of the World Cup in 2003, and Polly resigned, and then Graham was sort of appointed out of the blue, and we went to Bangladesh, and we won there. And then we went to England. And Nasser Hussain was the captain in the first test. And we had lost the one-day series against England leading up to the test series. So we were under pressure anyway. And at the toss of the first test at Edgbaston, Hussain introduced Graham to the match referee. And he said, yes, Greg Smith. So he deliberately got Graham's name wrong to show Graham what he thought of him. And Graham sort of looked at him and went out and scored 274, whatever it was, just so that Nasser Hussain resigned at the end of the test match. So that was sort of Graham. And so that's just one moment with his, but he had that, I'm in charge, I don't give a F what you guys are telling me. He had sort of that energy. Mm. And one of the first things he did, and whether it was right or wrong, he got rid of Lance Kloosner. Now, Lance Kloosner, if you think back, were you born yet in 1999, Khalid?
Yes.
So
I wasn't in South Africa though.
Yeah, exactly. So obviously Kloosner was an icon of South African cricket. What he did at the '99 Cup and years after that, and he was this huge presence. But he was a difficult guy, And him and Smith didn't get along, and Smith felt that his sort of attitude and presence was detrimental to the team, and they got rid of Kloosner. And that was a huge decision if you think for this 23-year-old captain going into that England series. But he sort of had the balls to make that decision. And that's going to be... he was fortunate in the sense that I think Eric Simons is a very not misunderstood, the wrong word, underrated cricket guy. And he was Graham's captain for those first 2 years. First 6 months, frankly. Yeah. And they played together, or Eric coached him at Western Province, so they had a very close relationship. And so I think he was a very supportive coach. It could have gone wrong if at the time he had a very sort of strong-minded coach who felt, who's this 23-year-old that's throwing his weight around, and the two of them clashed. That could have gone wrong horribly. But then, because of those, so Graham scored, I think, 277 in the first test at Edgbaston, which was drawn because of rain. And then in the second test, he scored 253. And Mackay took 10 wickets at Lord's. So we then drew that series 2-2. I think 2-2, maybe 1-1. But anyway, we drew the series. But that sort of established Graham, those 200s, and he was this strong, leading this team that everybody was down on because of our underperformance at the World Cup. And he sort of himself sort of 6 months period. And in that sense, I don't know Aiden well enough to know if he's going to be that strong from the beginning. Like I said, you know him better than I do. Yeah. But people I've spoken to do think he's a natural captain. And that's a big thing. I actually believe in that. If I know most schoolboy cricket, the teachers just pick the best player and make him captain. But there is a thing about thinking as a captain that is different than thinking as a batsman or thinking as a... And if you played your entire life, even from the 13 as a captain, and you're constantly thinking bowling changes, you're thinking, how am I going to get this batsman out? What is the weak spot in this batsman's technique? How am I going to get him out? I do think that translates to captaincy later on. So somebody like AB, who was never a captain, Faf was always the captain. when they played together as schoolboys. I think you saw that later on, where I never thought Avey was a natural captain. He was a
I never
genius
thought
as
so,
a
no.
batsman, but I never thought he was a natural captain. Where if you look to win Faf over that series against Australia in 2016,
Yeah, yes.
when things really went wrong for them in that first, if you think back, Dale Steyn hurt his shoulder. We were 100. We were bowled out for 243, I think, in the first innings. And then Australia was 150 for 1. And Dale
Messed up himself.
And so we had a bowling attack of KG, Vern, and Keshav in his first test at Perth, where spinners never do well. We won that test match. So not that that's all captaincy, but it showed that the culture in the team was good. Because you could have very easily let your heads drop. They are 150 for 1, under in the first inning. But they bowled Australia then out from 151, I think the lead was 1. So it might have been 244 Australia got. And that's I was so impressed with him because the culture in the team had changed from, if you think, that was maybe November 2016. And over the New Year, the previous Christmas, we lost badly to England. Dale wasn't playing, but we had a full strength team in those series. So, yeah, I just thought you could see the difference a natural captain like Faf made. And I think that's getting our leadership on the field right is key. Coming back to your other thing about the strength of the domestic cricket isn't strong. And that needs to be sorted out. But again, I'm not sure how strong our domestic cricket has been in the past either. You hear a lot of people talking about the glory years of the 80s when we were in isolation and you had the mean machine in Transvaal and you had a pretty decent Western Province team. But frankly, we had 3 good provinces back then. Let's be honest. I don't want to. Free State was not too bad by the end of the 80s. But through most of the 80s, you had the mean machine that was basically the South African test team with 2 or 3 Western Province players that would have been added to that. Peter Kirsten, Garth Leroux, maybe Kenny McEwen. And Natal was competitive. And that's it. EP was poor before Kepler came in the late 80s and sort of took over the team and put his personality on that side. And Northern Transvaal was basically Transvaal B, not even Transvaal B. And then that's the thing that people always forget is as great as that mean machine team was of Pollock and Rice and Cook and Callan and Sylvester and McKenna. They all would have played international. They've all if you take the 15 best like you how good and how strong would our domestic structures have been? And so I think people forget that cricket in South Africa was always a tiny sport. And that pre-1965, basically pre-Graham Pollock, our test record was awful. We got smashed by England. We got smashed by Australia year after year after year. And we were sort of competitive with New Zealand. Then we had a great team in the late 60s, early 70s with Pollock and Richards and Proctor and Dennis Lindsay and that team and Peter Pollock. And then we went into isolation, where, I'm going to piss people off, where people always tell you that our team of the 1970s and 80s would have been competitive with the Aussies and the Windies of the 70s and the 80s. I don't agree. Where we had good players, but and I don't want to talk about the rebel tours and isolation cricket, but just as an example, basically the West Indies B/C team came here in 1983, 84, and we won one year and they won the next year. So we struggled to beat the West Indies B/C team. So that was, I know it was a rebel cricket and maybe they weren't as, and that's the thing where I don't even know how motivated that West Indies team was to play, because they were just here for the money. And in the 90s, we were competitive because we had a fabulous bowling attack. Alan Donald, and then from the mid-90s, Sean Pollock, and even Craig Matthews and Brian McMillan. We had a proper bowling attack, and Fanie de Villiers, we could bowl people out. So you're always in a chance to win a test match if you can bowl somebody out.
Yeah.
But we were really at the top of the world. I'm talking test cricket. I'm not talking, our one-day team was the best team in the world from the late 90s, early 2000s. I'm talking test cricket. We were really at the top end of world cricket. So by 2000, 2001, 2002, we were the second best team behind Australia. And then whenever we played them, they smashed us. But from 2006 to 2016, even though we weren't always, we didn't lose in away series from 2000, in an era when nobody won away from home. We didn't lose an away series in 23 test series in a row from 2006 to 2016. And that was because, and we've spoken about this, you and I, but that was because I think we had a golden generation of batting with Callis. He was sort of in the previous generation, but because he played so long, he was still in this one. But then that team that came from the 2003 under-19 team of de Villiers, Dumini, Amla, Faf. So we finally had a consistent top order that consistently scored big runs. And when you do that, you're not going to lose test matches. And like I said, we lost series against Australia at home in that period. And we didn't lose away from home from 2006, where we won 3 series in a row away from home, Australia, which nobody else has done, I think. Maybe the Windies of the 70s and the 80s. And we won 2 series away from home in England. And we went 3 series away from home without losing in India. So that's an astonishing sort of record. And I think that the performance of that team is one of the reasons why the reaction is so bad now to what's happened in Pakistan. Is I think our fans expect that to be the norm.
Yeah.
And I don't want to be too harsh, but I think if you're going to expect that to be the norm, you're going to be very disappointed for a very long time. Because I think we can strive to be that good again. But even as the Aussies have shown, they can't expect that team of theirs of 98 to 2005 to be the norm, or the Windies. I sometimes look back at some of those Windies teams from the 70s and 80s, and I think to myself, what must the Windies fan think today? If you're somebody that grew up, I was born in 1974, so if somebody's born 10 years ahead of me, and you were 10 or 11 in 1975, and for the next 15 years, you smashed every team in the world. So what have you thought for the last 30 years when you lose against Bangladesh, or you lose in South Africa 3-0, 4-0, 5-0? and I know they've got their own structural problems, but I'm not saying that we should give up and not hold our team to account for poor play.
Yeah.
But I don't think we can expect them to be as successful as they were between, say, 2006 and 2016.
So you spoke.
Sorry.
Yeah.
No, sorry.
Okay. So you spoke about over there giving the captain control and how much Graham Smith has influence on the side and who was selected and all of those things. He was involved with all of that.
Yeah.
Then, if we're gonna give power back to the captain, will someone like Aiden? Because what I notice about Aiden in conversations with him and knowing, as I've got to know him over the years, his understanding of players in a domestic setup, what their strengths are, what type of mentality they have, what types of personalities they are, is very, very good. His assessment of those players is exceptional. So he does know who the talent are that are coming through. And I think he'll have the ability to be able to assess who can be the next person to help that test side, or who can be strong enough for the test arena. Because now that he's experienced it and he's experienced different conditions, played against some of the top players in the world, he's played against everybody in the world already, except bar New Zealand, I think. So he has that ability to be able to assess who will be able to be that core. But then I feel like at the moment, if he is captain now, when you have guys like Dean Elgar, Rassi, and Faf in the team, he kind of respects them. Like it's still like they're heroes.
No,
You know what I
absolutely.
mean? Whereas
See,
when
there's a couple of things here. There's a couple of things here. Firstly, when I say the captain is in charge, I don't mean he decides who plays completely on his own.
No.
So it's the same coin because okay, I'm not talking COVID yet. I'm talking normal times. You're basically away from Graham Smith played very little domestic cricket in the 10 years that he was captain. So yes, he would now and then play, but so he wasn't in a position to say that, say, by 2011, that Vernon Philander was brilliant and he should be picked. Graham Smith's recollection of Vernon Philander was in 2008 in England, where he couldn't catch a ball and he was very poor in the one-day team, and it looked like he'll never play international cricket again. So Vernon then went back to domestic cricket, where he had 3 brilliant seasons for the Cobras, and he was the leading wicket taker by a country mile in all 3 seasons. I don't think if it was up to Graham alone, he would have picked Vernon again. Because Vernon, his impression of when he last played with Vernon was poor. So in that sense, yes, the captain can have an insight and he can have a say in the discussion. But I think that's where the coach, and that's where and I know people hate selectors, and they think it's committee men and it's politicians and all this type of stuff. But the reason you have selectors is because the coach and the captain is out of the country for 3 months on a tour. So they don't know what's happening domestically. So normally when the team's on tour, one of the selectors travel with the team, and then the selection committee, while the squad is selected by the coach. The coach is one of the selectors, if I remember correctly. I'm actually not sure how the current system worked, but in the past there was 3 or 4 selectors, of which the coach was one.
Okay.
And the coach would speak to the captain beforehand, who do you want, type of thing, and he'd be his voice in the selection committee. And then they would pick a squad. And once the squad is selected on tour, the selection committee is the one selector that travels with the team, the coach, and the captain. And they'll pick the team from the squad. So that's where the captain gets his say, from the players that he knows, who he practices with. But he's not so much part of picking the squad from the domestic competition when he didn't see the guys play, and he has been away from that. So that's the structure.
Yeah.
the way that Aiden works with senior players, if they make him captain, that'll be one of his biggest challenges.
Yes.
Because I don't think I'm speaking out of turn by saying that when Pollock was fired as captain after the World Cup in 2003, I don't think he was very happy about it. He still wanted to be captain. And so suddenly he was a senior bowler. I think he was 28 or 29 at the time, in a team captained by this 23-year-old who was very brash and very confident and in your face type of. He was a very in your face type of leader, and come on and GG and rah rah. Those first years, he was very much that. And I think you could see it on the field. It wasn't that he wasn't trying hard. He was still a fabulous professional player, Pollock, and he was really. But I don't think he was a core part of the leadership group. I think he sort of withdrew to an extent that he didn't want. Maybe even he thought if he was part of the leadership group, then people will still turn to him rather than to Graham as the captain. So he withdrew to an extent where Smith very soon made Boucher and Callis, who were the two other sort of senior holdovers from the previous team. They became these key lieutenants. And maybe Aiden will have to do that. I don't know how long Faf is still going to be in the team.
Exactly. But this is a very unique situation, though, because I think when Graham came in, he had a lot of more senior guys around him than what Aiden's going to have when he walks in as a captain now.
Yeah, it's one of the key issues with our team at the moment. There's not the senior spine of the team is sort of lacking at the moment. Yeah. I think Aiden will have to rely on people like Temba, who is now becoming a senior player, and he's got a good head on his shoulders, and KG and Keshav, and those guys who are going to be the senior players, and they're going to be around, and Dean. And so those guys, he's going to rely on them. But you've got to be careful where one of the mistakes of Graham's era, which they rectified sort of after 2008, was that key group of his became too powerful. And it bred resentment in the rest of the squad by the 2007 World Cup. The other players in the team weren't very happy with that key group who they felt were untouchable within the team. So it's something that you have to manage. But so that's why you're captain, you're the leader. You've got to manage different personalities within the team.
Yeah. And I think Aiden... Yeah, I think Aiden's the type of person that will put country team first. That's the type of person I think he is, that I've get to know. So
yeah, and I don't think Graham and them did it because he was looking after his mates.
Yeah.
It's you do it because you think these are the best guys in the team, and these are the guys I'm going to war with, and these are the guys I can rely on, and I trust them. That's why you form that bond and that click, which is fine. Because you have to have your lieutenants and the guys you rely on, but you can't do it in such a way that the other players feel excluded.
It's why I think Faf was such a
that's the difficult balance. Yeah. From the outside, and I never traveled with the team when Faf was captain, but from the outside and speaking to people and speaking to other players, Faf was honest.
Yeah.
Which sounds simple. But it's not very simple when people ask you, but I'm not playing, and why aren't you bowling me in this? And from speaking to people, Faf always tried to be honest, so that even if you didn't agree with him, the culture in the team was it was my decision that you didn't play, and this is the reasons. And you can be angry, but at least you feel that he didn't lie to you and he was bullshitting you. Where that seemed to be sort of leadership style, and it worked up to a point.
Very true. So the batting, let's get into that. That's the last point I want to make. How do we correct this? Do we hack some people, give some youngsters an opportunity. How do we face this at the moment? Because there were some suggestions that maybe Rassie must just stay in the ODI setup, not maybe in Test cricket, and giving young people a chance. There's some talk about the Faf must just get out of the team right now and he must be replaced. There's talk about Quinton moving up the order. There's talk about Temba moving up the order. There's a lot of different theories flying around the internet and the world about how South Africa should approach their batting. I think the only thing that people can agree upon is the opening pair. So Altus, how do we solve it?
Yeah, it's not going to be solved easily. The one thing I will say is the worst thing we can do is making willy-nilly changes for change's sake. When Mickey Arthur became captain in coach in 2005, one of the key things that they changed from the previous regime and the previous 5-6 years was they made a decision: if we give somebody an opportunity, he's going to play 6, 7, 8 test matches. Because in the 5-6 years before that, there was a rotating cast of Boeta Dippenaar, Neil McKenzie, Jacques Rudolph, Justin Ontong, Martin van Jaarsveld. I'm probably forgetting 2 or 3 other players now as well. They would each get a test or 2 or 3 and then get dropped. And then the next one would come in and he'd get a test or 2 or 3 and get dropped. Until again. So I think put 30 test matches like that, where he never got a long run in the team. Now, to an extent, that was also the fault of the batsmen, because if they scored the runs, they would have stayed in the team. But the fact of the matter is that chopping and changing never helped anybody. Instability in any sports team, I think, is death. So that doesn't mean that people are undroppable. But if you make the decision to drop somebody and give somebody else a chance, then that person has to get a long run in the team. And you tell him beforehand, you're going to get X. You're going to play for this series and this series and this series. And even if you make 5 ducks in a row, we're not going to drop you. We're going to give you a run. So that you don't look over your shoulder every time you walk into the middle. But that's not a solution. That's just something that we shouldn't do.
Yeah.
The other thing that's difficult, it's very difficult to bring young players into a losing team.
Yeah.
Because you're setting up those youngsters to fail to a certain extent. There's nothing better than having a winning team and bringing those youngsters in, because they can just play their own game. It's not up to them to change if you bring somebody in, Reinhard van Tonder, say, the youngster from the Free State, from the Knights.
Yeah.
And he'll now have to bat at 3. Say if you keep Faf and you keep Temba and you keep Quinny, that's your 4, 5, and 6. So say you drop Rassie and you bring Reinhard van Tonder in. He's somebody that bats at 3, I think, for the Knights.
Yeah.
If you bring him into the current batting lineup, you're basically asking him to change the fortunes of the team. You're not just picking him at number 6, where you're telling him, get yourself settled and get used to Test cricket, and then we'll move you up. That's how I would like to introduce young players.
Yes.
You always start them at 6 until they sort of get their feet underneath them, and then they move up to their natural positions. I think in the long term, the only way you solve the batting is by fixing the domestic system and getting our domestic teams back to scoring big runs. And so that comes down to the structures at junior level and how those players are then progressed into the franchise system is coming to an end, into the new provincial setup from next year. Because of the problem we've had is that the gap between the under-19s and how we develop our talent, because I think we always have good young talent, but how we develop our talent from under 19 into senior first class cricket has been poor. I don't think the domestic semi-pro thing worked in the past. Just thinking back now, this is now completely by the by, but the 2009 under 19 World Cup, Virat Kohli and Ravi Jadeja were the two players that were India's best players.
Yeah.
And they beat South Africa in the final just. At that, I think the three South Africa players that South Africans will remember from that team is Parnell was the captain. He was still 18 at the time. And Riley Rousseau and Reza Hendricks. They were the three sort of that went the furthest from that team. And the gap at that tournament between Kohli and Riley was very small. Within 3 years, Kohli was one of the best batsmen in the world.
Oh, yeah.
And it took Riley another 5 or 6 years to get into the Proteas setup. And that wasn't because of quotas or any transformation. It was just his performances at domestic level wasn't that good. And that's not against him, because he was a senior international player by the age of 25, 26, which is normal. And Kohli was just, but it was and unfortunately, we don't have the financial resources that India have. The amount of money, I'm not sure if it's that, it was that year. That was the India overhauled its under 19 structures. And their budget for their under 19s team and its training and they basically took that team all across the world to play again in all conditions and against all teams. And their budget that year was $50 million.
Yes.
Our under 19 team's budget was 5 million rand.
Yeah.
So that's the type of difference that you're never going to fix. So you can't say, oh, woe is me. We'll never be able to compete against the India and the Englands, because I promise you their budget is a hell of a lot of pounds than ours is rands.
Yeah.
The under 19 team as well. And so we've got to find a way of making sure that any talent that we produce at schoolboy level and under 19 level, that we don't lose that talent.
Yeah.
And then structure our domestic cricket in such a way. And I think one of the things that we'll have to do is look at the pitches. Where the last couple of years, it seemed to me that our pitches at domestic level is also, it's too to take wickets.
Yeah.
So bowlers don't really learn how to take wickets on flat wickets, and batsmen don't know how to score big runs. And that we have to change, where we can't pick somebody for Test cricket batting-wise if they don't average at least high 40s domestically in first-class cricket.
Yeah.
And that's the type of, unfortunately, I don't see short-term solutions.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that you don't compete, and it doesn't mean that there's no reason why New Zealand should have a better Test team than we do. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
They have his best batsman in Kane Williamson, and he's fabulous, but he's just one guy. And so if we can get sort of our team and our structures right, we should at least be at a level where it's difficult for teams to beat us at home, and we compete away from home. And that's where I don't think we should look to be coming to be back at where we were in 2011. But I don't think there's sort of easy solutions in just looking at the national team and selections. And as for dropping Faf, for example, one of the key problems is a lack of experience in our batting lineup. So I wouldn't actually go about dropping the most experienced guy in the team just now. So those, I'd like to bring in some of the youngsters around the country who show that they consistently score runs. but one, maximum two at a time. Any more than that,
Yes.
go look at the Cape Cobras and what a bunch of young players playing with very little experience and very few senior players, how they perform. And we don't want that at the national level.
Yeah, and you don't want them to just pick any youngster as well. It needs to be the youngster with the right mentality. The mindset is very important,
No,
strong.
completely.
And if they've shown that,
and you don't want, and you don't want them to set them up to fail.
yeah,
You want to pick somebody that you believe is right to be in the team.
But doesn't that mean that our senior players then need to take more responsibility by batting higher up in the order?
Always. It is, but you also, our batting is so weak that, putting it too strongly, the point is that you want to put players in the position where they are going to succeed. Okay. So that means if Tenba is going to consistently score 60s and 70s and 50s at 6, putting up with 3-4 where he scores 20s and 30s, that's not making the team better.
Mm-hmm.
If you see what I mean. So I'm a believer in picking somebody, empowering people to succeed. So if somebody is best and he feels comfortable in a certain position, if you don't think that he's good enough for that position, then you drop him and you pick somebody else. But I don't think you play him out of position to fix some other problem, and then you're creating new problems by doing that. So I'm not too big a fan with juggling the batting lineup in that sense.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so I've got one question for you just the end of the show. Dix has asked, what do you think about Rassie van der Dussen as a player and his future for the Proteas in all formats?
Sorry, Khalid, I didn't hear you.
Yeah, so we just got one question over here. What do you think about Rassie van der Dussen as a player and his future for the Proteas in all formats?
I was a bit dubious about him as a test player in the beginning, but he showed me something in both test matches in the second innings. But if he wants to stay in that position long term, batting at 350s and 60s isn't good enough. So those starts, and that's something for Temba as well. You know, I like him as a batsman. I think he's good, but 100 in 5 years, that's good enough.
It's not good enough.
Even more so if you bat at 3. Once you get yourself in and play like he did in both test matches, one of those 250s must get into 100 and preferably 140, 150 if you're batting at 3. So he's only played 10 test matches, so I don't want to be too harsh on him, but that's the next evolution, that if you're batting at 3, 60s and 70s aren't good enough. Well, if you're batting top 6, for example, 60s and 70s aren't good enough. You've got the difference between 250 in the first innings and 400 in the first innings is that 100 that the rest of the team can play around. And that's what they've got to do.
Yeah,
and Rassie's got to do that as well.
Rassie does have to do that. And the problem is that with Rassie, at the domestic level, it's not like he has a good record of converting at the domestic level.
Yeah.
So for the Lions, he's only scored 23 50s. He scored 23 50s and only converted 7 of them to 100. So like he only has 700s on his name. So,
and that comes back to my original point, where long term we've got to fix our domestic structures, that players get into that habit of scoring big runs and consistently scoring hundreds. And because I firmly believe scoring hundreds is habit forming, and if you get into that mode, then it becomes easier, where you don't panic when you get into the 80s and 90s and you start putting pressure because you're used to getting hundreds. And that's where we've got to fix our domestic structure.
Okay, guys. Thanks a lot. We'll probably do a part 2 in the future. I hope Altus enjoyed the show. I know I enjoyed it.
I
I
was
know
too
you guys.
long-winded.
No, I love it. I like to learn from you. I love your conversation. So thanks a lot for everybody that tuned in. Guys, you know what to do. Smash that like button, click that subscribe button, and click on the notification bell. The reason why I want you to smash that like button is so that we can get this video into recommended feeds, so that people can find our channel a lot more people can subscribe, etc., etc. Share this video with all your friends and your family as well. Don't forget to also subscribe to our Patreon, become a patron today. The link is in the description as well. It will help us get a lot more interviews. It will help you get more exclusive content, etc. So the link is on the screen and it's in the description for the Patreon as well. Please look out tomorrow for our magazine. You can subscribe right now. The latest issue of the magazine is going to come out tomorrow, so we're really excited about this edition. It's a women's only edition, so it's something that's a first for South Africa. I don't think any publication has really done that before. So I just want to say thank you to Altus. Thank you for all the fans for coming onto the show, and we'll see you guys again tomorrow with another daily show. And look out for my interview with Shukri Conrad tomorrow. I'm going to be doing that at 2 p.m. So look for that. I want to get some insights into him about the Under-19 team and what he's going to be doing with them to prepare them. Like Altus said, that little spot between getting his Under-19s ready for the domestic game, etc., is very important, and I think Shukri is the right man for the job, but I want to get some insights from him for that particular section as well. Thanks, guys, and we'll see you again very, very soon. Thank you, Altus, for coming onto the show, and we'll speak soon.
Cheers.
See you.